So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special edition of the Dom Mafia Report. The 2025 NFL Draft is right around the corner, and there's a lot of questions, right? Like, what positions should the Buffalo Bills prioritize? Can Brandon Beane actually hit a home run in the first round? Are there prospects that many of us have fallen in love with, but ultimately are just not a scheme fit for this organization in the first place? Well, I will tell you what. I am going to be unpacking all of that on today's episode. And luckily, I have my good friend Bruce Nolan from the Bruce exclusive podcast joining us today to give us a good understanding of where he sits with this potential Buffalo Bills strategy. Right before we lock him in and we bring him into the conversation, guys, giant shout out to William Mattar Law Offices, #1 law firm in the state of New York when it comes into car accidents. If you are hurt in a car, you better call William Mattar. I would never wish that on even my worst enemy, but it is imperative that you have the appropriate representation and look no further than William Mattar. And without further ado, folks, let's welcome Bruce in and smash the like button and welcome him to the show. Bruce, how's life, man?
Dude, it's a party all the time. Disco balls, dancers, dubstep. I mean, all the important D's are being covered by what I will say this though. We could have like rolled the whole Bluth thing that you could, the Bluth exclusive, I think would work because, Arrested Development. So I think maybe what I should do is I should do an opening based entirely on the hiccup and call it the Bluth exclusive and just use the actual Arrested Development music and just kind of go with that. Maybe get like a narrator over time, but that's not what Bruce was doing, was it? Whatever. It'll be a good time.
It's always bringing the energy, and I can appreciate that, man. You know what? Since Rumblings ended up having that fiasco, I want to say, so it was about a year ago. I'm so glad that you did decide to come back on an independent level because I don't know what I would have done without your show. It is still to this day my favorite sort of podcast on the internet where it stands. Super glad that you were able to come back on an independent basis. And that's the fact, or are you with the network now currently?
So what happened was a bunch of people who were previously Buffalo Rumblings podcasters just decided that they were just going to kind of band together under new leadership. And so there's multiple feeds. So I have my own feed. So from all intents and purposes, it looks like an independently, held entity, but there's actually some mechanisms behind the scenes where it's actually part of a greater, what you would consider to be a Rumblings network, right? Sarah Larson kind of heads it up. And so she takes care of all the stuff behind the scenes from an administrative standpoint. She also has a show on it. And then obviously, shows like Jamie did Big Note. And we brought back, shows that people really liked, but now instead of them all being lumped into a Buffalo Rumblings feed, they are kind of loosely connected via a Rumblings network. So if you can go and type in the Bruce exclusive, you can find just my show if that's something that's your jam. But if you go to the notes on my show, it'll say, "Hey, Bruce exclusive, the Rumblings network, and here are all the other shows." So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. I get the sense of community, but I also get the sense of independence, which is kind of nice for me.
Yeah, most definitely. And you know what? I'm sure that you certainly have quite a few opinions about this upcoming draft. I did see one of your recent posts on X that did make me giggle when you ultimately ended up saying that you were muting guys that were scouting based off of helmets.
Yeah.
So which I can only assume was just having people hyper obsess over a prospect because they went to their favorite SEC school and or their alma mater.
Yeah, it's a weird phenomenon that for some reason I don't know why we haven't stomped it out. It's one of those weird things that it just seems like a bygone era of football scouting where we didn't have the information that we have now. And so it never really caught up the way it was supposed to. So, hey, CJ Stroud, right? He's going to be a bust because Ohio State quarterbacks are always busts. Yeah. Like, I was just like, seriously? Like, it's the absolute, like, it's the bottom of the barrel laziness, right?
Yeah.
It really is. It's a little bit like, it's almost just, it's like prejudice, but for NFL scouting. Right. It's when you identify someone by the most superficial of connective tissue between two prospects and go, oh, well, they have the same helmet. It's like, oh, well, Jalen Hurts is going to stink because he's an Alabama quarterback. And look at the Alabama quarterbacks from the 1930s. They stink too. Yeah. It's like, wait, what? So for me, It was the same thing with Kyer Elam, right? Kyer Elam wasn't bad because he was a Florida cornerback. That wasn't it. He didn't pan out for a bunch of other reasons that have nothing to do with the fact that he was a Florida cornerback. And it's always those things where it's always true until it's not, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, show me another Wyoming quarterback that was good, Dan. I mean, like that's how lazy that sounds. Like no Wyoming quarterbacks have ever been good and then all of a sudden Josh Allen's good. It's like, well, he's a Wyoming quarterback. Josh Allen went to. It's the same things over and over again. I think we could do so much better now. Yeah. And so for me, when somebody jumps into my replies with that level of analysis, where it's just, well, he's going to be bad because he's from TCU and all TCU wide receivers are bad. I'm just like, you know what? I can't get through this person. They're a lost cause. It's done. I just move on, right? I'm going to devote my energies elsewhere.
It's a very similar sentiment. So right when people hyper obsess over like a player being related, so to a NFL legend, for example, like, oh my God, Dan, we have to look at this wide receiver. He was third cousins and his roommate ended up rooming with him in junior college. That he is going to be someone special.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to put any disrespect toward Frank Gore Jr. as well, but like that's like what I have seen, or even dating back right to Chad Kelly. So potentially being drafted by the Buffalo Bills since he was the nephew of Jim Kelly back in the day. So I certainly understand that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it happens all the time. And I don't know how many examples of it we need to see go horribly bad before we stop doing that. But the truth is, I think it's a generational thing. Yeah. And what's going to happen is it's a little bit like, people who are still hung up on the fact that, the way to win in the NFL is, running the ball and stopping the run. Like that's like the most important things you can do. Right. And I think it's just one of those things that has to kind of age out because there's plenty of data out there that indicates that's not the case. It's readily available. They're choosing not to get better. They're choosing not to get smarter. Right. And so you just kind of wait. You just kind of wait them out. And at some point, they'll either, adjust to the circumstances around them, or they'll just retire from watching football. And that's the only way at that point that opinion's ever going to change. Exactly. So it's the same thing.
Yeah, sure. So shifting focus right now, I feel like anytime that I scroll through X, so there is heavy debate on what should be prioritized on this roster. I'd say a large majority of Bills Mafia is saying, you know what? We need a defensive tackle. We need a true one tech that could be paired alongside with Ed Oliver. That's going to solve all of our stopping third down conversion issues, maybe help out with run defense. Several people are saying that CB2 is more of a priority. A small sect are still saying that a wide receiver with some speed on the outside that can create vertical separation for Josh Allen is indeed the number one priority. So I got to ask you, Bruce, I have never really been one to marry a position to a specific round. And I'm not sure if it's fair for me to feel this way, but I feel like that's kind of how we walked away with Kyer Elam a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
By just focusing in, like, no matter what, we need to walk away with a cornerback in the first round. Once Trent McDuffie ended up getting taken off of the board, many would say that Brandon Beane panicked and took Kyer, who wasn't a scheme fit in the first place. So I'm going to ask you, what camp are you in, like right now, as far as us walking away from this draft? What is the most imperative to hit on? Either defensive tackle, CB2, safety, wide receiver? Go ahead.
Dan, you and I are very, very different people, as you probably figured out at some point, right? I imagine your listeners became aware that you and I are very, very different people. Yes. You and I share a very similar opinion on this. I don't believe in marrying prioritization to expenditure. I think that that's a mistake. Well, it's the number one need, so you draft at the highest. It's the number two need, so you draft at the second highest. It's the number three need, so you draft at the third. Like, that's not how it works. Yeah. And if you do that over a long period of time, the amount of talent erosion that you end up with because you consistently partially reached on needs over and over and over and over and over again, the actual level of the talent on your roster actually erodes over time because you're constantly making these micro decisions where you're prioritizing what you would consider to be a lesser player because of a positional need. And so for me, that doesn't mean that you can't kind of bucket it. Like if you come out of the first day of the NFL draft and you don't have a defensive tackle, okay, that's disappointing. Why? Because at some point, their value was there. That's the question, right? Now, I don't know if it was there in the first round, but if you go through 3 picks or 4 picks and you go through many opportunities that you have to trade up and trade down, and all the different obstacles you have, right? There was going to be a time when it was the right fit of value and need. Like, what are the odds where you go through the entire first 2 days of the draft and at no point was it right? To me, that's one of those excuses that GMs use where it's at the end of the day, you're like, oh, man, if you go through this entire draft and the Bills don't draft a corner, which I don't think is going to happen, and Brandon Beane gets up there and goes, it just wasn't a right fit. Like, I just don't buy it, man. Like, I don't. Like, you had 10 picks. Like, it wasn't the right fit, any of those picks. Like, and so for me, while I admit that you shouldn't say, well, number 1 need equals number 1 pick, number 2 need equals number 2 pick, and so on and so forth, I do think you can kind of bucket them together where there are going to be opportunities with the right player and the right time with the right value that fits the right need. And so I think that if you look at it kind of a macro level, I think that's more appropriate than looking at it round by round.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I certainly understand that for sure. Like, when it comes into it, and that Kyer Elam sort of paradigm and or that narrative that's attached to Brandon Beane, a lot of what people are trying to say, and I also see this on the internet quite regularly, that there's a lot of pressure on Brandon Beane because he quote unquote cannot hit on a draft, which is ridiculous. I certainly understand that. But I feel like it's people really punishing him for some of these first round picks that we have had as of late. How do you feel about this, Brandon Beane? Are you a tad nervous with this first round selection for him, or so are you a tad more optimistic on it?
I'm always nervous. I exist in a perpetual state of slightly unease, right?
Okay.
Like, it's just, so I'm always nervous. I think the narrative at the beginning of the offseason last year was heavily around Brandon Beane's not hitting homers, right?
Yeah.
In the draft. There's doubles, there's singles, maybe even occasional triple. I think 2 things have really changed since this time last year. And that is Christian Benford had another absolute stud year under his belt and got extended. And you think to yourself, okay, is Christian Benford a homer? I kind of feel like he is. Like, he's a stud. And then also Spencer Brown had his best year ever. And you're looking at two top 10 at their position tackles. Like, I think Deion Dawkins is a top 10 left tackle. I think Spencer Brown's a top 10 right tackle. If you have a top 10 right tackle, is that a homer? Like, I feel like because the homers haven't hit at skill positions, it kind of taints our ability to look at that. I think if the homer would have been, I'll give you a great example. If Gregory Rousseau was the Christian Benford of defensive ends, I think we'd feel differently. Sure. I think if Spencer Brown, you swap Spencer Brown's career with like Keon Coleman's, right? I think you'd feel differently. I think the fact that those hits haven't come, those really big homers, they haven't come at flashier positions, has changed our dynamic, and it has changed the way we talk about Brandon Beane. And I don't think we've noticed it because I was one who said this last offseason. I said, lots of doubles, lots of triples, not a lot of homers, right? And then 2 homers happened, kind of they developed over the last year. And now I'm thinking, okay, that's not the right way for me to phrase that. The right way for me to phrase that is the homers haven't happened at flashy enough positions for you to notice.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, especially when you look at his history. So because normally when I look at a first round of an NFL draft, 9 times out of 10, there really isn't 32 first round graded players. Mm-hmm. And that is largely a good place for an NFL team to be in, right? Because that means that you are going deep into the playoffs, and not every single first round is going to have it. Sure. So was I a tad sad about with the Dalton Kincaid's production last year, right within the playoffs? I really wanted him to take one more step. I understand he was dealing with an injury here and there, but I'm not going to mark him off as a bust just yet. Still love Gregory Rousseau. I do kind of wish that he would improve a bit in the sexy stats, but hopefully that helps out with some of the selections that we have. I think one of the only like massive misses is Kyer Elam. But then again, that was the exact same draft class where we ended up extending, 3 of the guys and then 1 guy who is still sitting in the background waiting for his contract extension. So it's a good place to be in as an NFL organization, but it's just a bit harder to hit those home runs toward the back half of the first.
It is. And maybe my best take, I've had a lot of really bad ones. So I got to make sure I take credit when the good ones come in. Not too long ago, I posted on X and said, I think Christian Benford might end up being to Kyer Elam what Kyle Williams was to John McCargo.
Oh, okay.
And that totally ended up being the case, right? It's the same position, same draft, massively outproduces his higher drafted counterpart, gets an extension, becomes beloved by fans, and you forget who the first round pick was. Years from now, John McCargo and Kyer Elam are going to pop up on a Bills trivia and be like, hey, do you remember who that guy was? And you're like, oh man, the Bills traded up for this guy in the bottom of the first round who went out to be, oh, it's the same guy. So I agree with you. I think it is more difficult. I think the thing that gives Bills fans anxiety, and I think rightfully so, is you look at the run that Brett Veach went on for a while there, not in the last year or so, but he went on a run in Kansas City where he just absolutely dominated, like back to back drafts. And that set the stage for a lot of the young, cheap talent that the Chiefs have used in coordination with two of the greatest offensive and defensive minds and a great quarterback to be able to, get multiple championships. And they're looking at that going, I want that. Right. But what they don't realize is that Howie Roseman took advantage of all the years the Eagles were bad. So every time the Eagles were bad and they ended up with like a 12th pick or something, he absolutely hit it out of the park, like every single time, except for maybe Jordan Davis, right? You look at the Devonta Smith, right, draft. And, every time he seems to catch falling players, Nolan Smith obviously came to mind, but he's basically rebuilding a Georgia defense there in the Eagles. And so every time he has an opportunity where there's a down year, he hits it. The Bills haven't had a down year.
No,
like they haven't had a year where everything went off the rails and they ended up picking 12th and you can get a star blue chip player because they've been almost hurt by their consistency, which is such a weird phenomenon.
Yeah.
But I think that that's kind of something you have to look at with Brett Veach. Yeah. Okay. He went on a roll, and Howie Roseman. Yeah. He nailed a couple top 15 picks and the Bills haven't had a top 15 pick. So it's a weird thing when you look about the peers and you try and compare them to Brandon Beane.
So we've established, right, that like normally it's about 15 to 16 players, maybe even down to like 2021 that would consider to be first round graded talent any given year. So a lot of the discussion is that Brandon Beane likes to move when it comes into the NFL draft. And certainly correct me if I am wrong, but he has only stayed put twice in his career. He's traded down a couple of times and he has also traded up.
Yeah. Staying put is not his thing.
No. Right. But then I was thinking about trading down for a tad, but then I ultimately ended up looking at how many picks we have in the first place. We have 10. And I'm not sure about you, but I hardly believe that 10 players would be able to be rostered on the 53-man roster by itself. So I'm kind of almost of the belief that I do see him doing a Brandon Beane-esque type of trade up, like not up into the top 10. I think the absolute highest would be 19th with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm just targeting teams that have very limited draft capital. But a more realistic area, I would say, would be 24 and or 21 with the Steelers or the Minnesota Vikings. What do you think he's going to do?
So I think the Vikings are a great team that you have identified. And the reason that is because they're short on draft capital. So I think that if you're going to move, that's, if you think that there's a player like, I mean, if Kenneth Grant starts to fall or if Derek Harmon's there and you think to yourself, okay, I can go get him and I can do it with a 1 and a 3, right? Could probably get you where you want to go. He's already twice. He's used a 1 and a 4 to jump. That's been a couple times that's happened where he's packaged a 1 and 4 and jumped up a couple spots here and there, but it's a little bit farther to 24. So you probably think a 1 and a 3 and maybe you get a 5 back. So something like that maybe gets you where you want to go. I think that one of the other things that you mentioned that kind of lies in this same phenomenon is that because you don't have 30 first round grades, trading down and then trading up to pinch becomes something valuable. So to your point, I'm not interested in trading down and having 13 picks, but I am interested in trading down and then trading up and pinching. And what you try and do is you're trying to get as many picks as you possibly can in the top 100 or 120. And so if you trade down from the first, you pick up a 4, and then you use the 4 and the 3 to trade up. So for things like that, you kind of pinch that together and you think, okay, where is the strength of this class? And I think a lot of times when you look at the defensive line group this year, which is a great defensive line group, and if I was looking at a defensive line group that I wanted to add multiple pieces to, then I think maybe I can get away with that. If Kenneth Grant's gone, Derek Harmon's gone, and you've got a list of 5, and you're like, okay, if I come away with any of these 5, I'm good. You trade down, you pick something up, you pinch up, you go, okay, I need to add as many players as I possibly can in the top 110, for example. That would be something you'd do. Last year, I said, there's no way he's going to make 10 picks. He made 10 picks. So what the heck do I know, right? But to me, I think that it makes sense in this draft with these groups, with these needs, to either try to get yourself up into a tier or accept the tier that you're in has more people than you probably are. More people probably is necessary for you to pick at 30. You trade down with someone like New Orleans, right, who's coming up to get a quarterback in the first round. I think that if you have, Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart on the board at 30, and you go call the Giants, and you go call New Orleans, and you go call somebody, you say, hey, guys, I know you want that 5th-year option on your quarterback deal. Let me drop back some spots. And then on day 2, you start making some phone calls, and you say, okay, I've got multiple 2s. I've got maybe a couple 3s. I've got a 4. Let's try and pinch this and get the maximum amount of picks where the value is. So those are 2 things I could see doing. I actually think that the least likely option is that he stands pat.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you and I would be on the same page there. He's going to do some sort of movement. And you know what? Like, we've been talking a lot about home runs, right? Like, we are looking for that home run pick from Brandon Beane. And I honestly think that it comes down into a big board. And so I'm not sure about you, but like a lot of during my shows, when I'm talking to the live chat, etc., I've given away a few names of where I think the Buffalo Bills are realistically in order, who I would want to prioritize based off of availability. My first one, hands down, would be Kenneth Grant. He is, in my opinion, the best one-tech defensive tackle we could go for. He is number 1 for me. Number 2, say, for example, that Will Johnson falls, which some people are. I would say that he would need to, that would have to be like a trade up to 19 sort of move. And that's even being, super optimistic that that is going to happen. Love that prospect on top of that. I'm not so much on Matthew Golden because I do like a lot of prospects later on into the draft. I love Jalen Royals, for example, right out of Utah State. I also love Kyle Williams out of Washington State, who I think could be found in the 4th, maybe the 5th round, depending. But I think I'm kind of curious to see, like, what is your visualized big board based off of the realistic spot that the Buffalo Bills will draft? Like, your 5 players that really stand out to you. I forgot to mention Emenwari as well. I love that safety prospect, and I would actually be thrilled with that pick.
So I am finding myself consistently on the wrong side of people when it comes to Emenwari.
Yeah. Okay.
Who I mind you, I like, but I actually compared him very recently to the Tremaine Edmonds of safety prospects.
Oh no,
which is an absolute size, speed freak. And then you watch his tape and you think, wow, there's nothing this guy can't do. But it's not about the can't, it's about the doesn't. So I watch him and I consistently find myself doing the exact same thing I did when I was watching Tremaine Edmonds, which is this. I go, come on, go. And so for me, it's that trigger pull. It's the instincts. It's the trigger. It's the deciphering. It's the diagnostic skills. And so I'm so fried from the Tremaine Edmonds experience that when I see that in a back 7 player, like I literally, my heart sinks and I'm like trying not to overcorrect in my eval because there's plenty of examples of players who have overcome that, players who have been coached out of it, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, no, please don't do this to me again. And because for me, I spent a lot of my Tremaine Edmonds time. I thought he was perfectly reasonable linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, but I spent so much of it disappointed that you couldn't marry those massive physical traits with trigger and instincts that now you see when you transfer to Terrell Bernard. We all saw it almost immediately when Terrell Bernard started week 1. We were like, oh, wow, that's what it looks like, right? And even though he doesn't have even close to the same amount of physical gifts. And so for me, that big board looks like, I think that Donovan Ezerako is on it.
Okay.
And I would not have said that. I would not have said that 2 years ago.
Okay.
Because I would say this is not a fit type for the Buffalo Bills, right? You look at Gregory Rousseau, you look at AJ Epinesa. They had a style, they had a type, right? It was long-limbed, heavy-handed, compression-style rushers, right? And then all of a sudden, they bring in Von Miller, and you're like, whoa, like, what? Like, combo breaker, right? It's not even close to being what you're used to. And then they draft Javon Solomon. You're like, they did it again. Like, okay, maybe that type is okay with them. And I know you look at the height weight and you think, oh, well, he's too small. He's really long for that height and weight. And so 85th percentile arm length. And you think to yourself, okay, he's a 3-4 outside linebacker. And listen, the NFL is really blurry now. It's not that simple anymore. And so I think you can make really good use of him. I think he's on the list. Another player I think is on the list is Trey Amos from Ole Miss. And I know that everybody loves him, and I know that it's the apple of people's eyes. And I think that the route recognition could use a little bit of work. But size, length, agility, press ability, ball skills. I mean, he checks so many boxes. And I truly want to see Sean McDermott can turn a passable cornerback. He can make a passable cornerback out of a guy who otherwise would be selling insurance, right? We've seen that happen. So what could he do with someone who's crazy physically gifted, right?
Yeah.
Well, we saw a swing and a miss on that. Kaiir Elam is crazy physically gifted, but can you get the head up stuff? And I think, you start watching Trey and you think, okay, I think he can get there. I think he's a late 1, early 2. I think it fits. I think he's on the big board. I think Azare Thomas is probably on the big board. Super Billsy, right? Absolutely fight you in the phone booth kind of guy. Aggression, excellent technique. I think that you get Azare in the situation that Kaiir Elam was in against the Chiefs, and he doesn't perform like that. Like, that's what I kept seeing when I was watching his tape. And you think to yourself, okay, early in the rep, like the quick game stuff, that's one of the things that Kaiir Elam struggled with. And it's one of the things that really chewed up the Bills, right? Because Sean McDermott was talking about, okay, hey, I can sit back and I can play zone and I can get, paper cutted to death, or I can come up and try and challenge him. Well, when you came up and try and challenge him, this is what happened, right? Bad things happened, like bad things, man. And not in a good, like Bruce Smith way, like really bad things. So for me, if you're looking for someone who you think can help you in the quick game, that can help you the early reps, I think Azare Thomas is on the list. So that's 3. Okay. If I'm going to continue down the road, I don't think Nick Skirton gets close. But if he got close, I think he absolutely fits what they want to do. Think about the AJ Epinesa conversation, okay? And what he played at in college and what he ended up doing with his body type when he came in. Like, the Bills had him slim way down, right?
Yeah.
Skirton's already ahead of that. He was listed at 285. He weighed at 257 at the combine. Like, just crazy stuff, and tested incredibly well. Now, I know it's going to give some teams pause. How do you play in your new body? But he's a mature pass rusher. Like, this guy doesn't come in with one move, right? He comes in with a whole array, a whole box. He's a 3, 4, 5 pitch guy, right? And that's a maturity. That's someone who can come in and play for you right now. And I think we've seen success of this type. I think George Karlaftis is a player that has come in with this archetype and had success right away. So I think that there's upside there. So that's 4. I would be shocked if the Bills go wide receiver early. I don't think they're going to. So I don't even have a wide receiver in my 5th one. Like, I don't have him.
Really?
No. My 5th spot is a defensive tackle from Toledo. I think Darius Alexander is somebody who has a shot. And I think he's one of those players that, because he was like the dude, right, on Toledo, people have a tendency to just project him out as being a 3 tech because he played a lot of 3 tech. But if you actually watch what he does, the way he utilizes his length, the way he peaks and clears. I think that the thing that holds him back is he can get a little tunnel vision-y, right? He can start to focus it on beat the block, beat the block, beat the block, beat the block. And his hands are going a million miles an hour like he's Neo from the Matrix. And
Yeah.
I think that that's great. You beat the block, but you weren't paying attention, and the running back ran past you, right? So I think that there's things like that pop up on the tape. But I mean, really good athlete, 6'4", 310, uses his length well, sheds well. I mean, these are players who I think are 5 possibilities at 30, and I think a couple of them you could probably even trade down a little bit and still get.
Got it. So it's funny, especially like when you mentioned it about so one player being a true 3 tech. That's half of the reason, because a lot of people are very high on Walter Nolan as well. So many people in the live chat are saying, oh no, like we have to go for Walter Nolan. And I think that he's a great prospect.
Yeah.
And I'm really not sure what you think, but I don't think he's the type of defensive tackle that we need. I think he's truly more of a 3 tech. And I think that if we were to put him in what we're asking him to do, it would sort of be a learning curve. And I feel like we actually need a player that can make a day one impact. We can't really afford to have a 1 to 2 year sort of development window. I'm not sure your thoughts on Walter Nolan there.
No, I'm with you. I think he's DT2 in the draft. I think
Yeah.
really highly of him. But exactly for your reason, I don't know how he fits here. And so if you put him next to Ed Oliver, like from a math standpoint, I think what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up impacting Terrell Bernard in a negative way by doing that. I think what you saw early in Tremaine Edmonds' tenure is what you saw a defense that asked their middle linebacker to cover 2 gaps because their defensive line couldn't. I mean, this is basically just a math problem, right? There's X amount of gaps and there's Y amount of defenders. And so if you're going to play nickel and you're going to consistently choose to do light boxes, you got to have people who can cover multiple gaps. And if you ask Walter Nolan to fire off, engage into an offensive lineman, hold his ground, extend at the point and say, hey, I need you to shed somebody and cover gaps to your left and your right, you're minimizing the thing he does best. And so for me, it's a weird fit, not necessarily because it's a 1 tech versus 3 tech thing. I think we kind of get boxed in there. From a math standpoint, somebody's got to cover 2 gaps, right? And do you want it to be Ed Oliver? No. Do you want to be Walter Nolan? No. Do you want it to be Terrell Bernard? No. Do you want to be Matt Milano? No. Okay. So who's going to do it then? Like, and somebody's got to do it, guys. The math just got to be there. Gregory Rousseau talks about playing gap and a half and how that changes your pass rush plan. If you have to ask everybody to play gap and a half because nobody can handle 2 gaps, you're really impacting your ability to get upfield and make plays. So for me, it's just a math thing. It's weird. I would be very interested if the Bills somehow pulled off some insanity and they trade up to, I don't know, 14 and they pick Walter Nolan. The immediate thing I'm going to say is somebody needs to ask Sean McDermott and like hold him to the ground. How does this work? Like, tell me how the math works, because the math is not mathing for me.
Yeah. No. So we're totally on the same page here. And I feel like I've teased this topic already. And like, we've already like pointed out a couple of prospects. I know that you are not a believer in Emanwari, but I'm also curious because it's very clear that, like with Bills fans, we all have favorite prospects that a lot of us are pounding the table that we need to draft. Are there any popular prospects on the internet that you want to stay far away from? So you see people saying, oh my God, no matter what, we need to walk away with this guy. But in your heart, you know that would be a terrible pick for this organization.
I'm not as high on Jaden Higgins as everybody else is.
Really?
I like Jaden Higgins.
Yeah.
But there's some like bottom of round 1 conversations happening with Jaden Higgins.
Yeah.
And I'm just not there with him. And it's part of its personal bias when it comes into, I mean, let's be honest, all of it's personal bias. It's draft evaluation, literally all of it's personal bias, right? This is all opinion.
It's the business we're in.
Exactly. It's all opinion. And I'm going to be super wrong about a ton of stuff. Although last year I did a pod, and I do this with Joe Marino every year, where immediately after the NFL draft, we do what we would have picked so that we can kind of codify it. Last year, I took Ladd McConkey and not Keon Coleman, and it's looking like I absolutely demolished Brandon Beane on that pick. So I'm going to take a W there for now. We'll see how Keon develops. Let's be honest, in 3 years, I could be really, really wrong, and that'd be awesome too, because who cares if I'm wrong if my team is good, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah, of course.
For me, Jaden Higgins is a weird eval because
Yeah.
I think when you have true X players, right, and you think yourself, oh, this guy's a true X, that bumps people up because there's so few of them. So many receivers, you think to yourself, and oh, they're better from the slot. They're better from the slot,
Yeah.
right? If eventually you have all people who are better from the slot, that's bad, right?
Of
And
course.
we've shifted to an NFL that a lot of teams put their best player in the slot. Like that's just how it works. And
Yeah.
so being able to find someone who can win on the outside, I think inflates that grade a little bit. For me, he doesn't offer a lot of yak, and he doesn't separate outside of physicality as well as I want him to. And so hip elevation is a big thing in taller players, right? Can you get low to explode out of your brakes? And he loses a ton of speed when he dips his hips. And so you think to yourself, okay, is this a guy who's going to have to kind of physically fight through everything? Because I don't know if you know this, we already have that guy, right? Like it's Keon Coleman, right? That's the guy. We had him. He's a big, strong player. I think Keon Coleman gives you way better yak than Jaden Higgins does. So for me, I'm not as high on Higgins. Like round 3, like I'm cool with it. But round 1 is too rich for me. That's a player that I'm just I feel very differently about than other people do. I think another player who I feel differently about than other people do is Landon Jackson. I like Landon Jackson.
He's a big name. He is a big name that everyone's obsessed with. I'm very interested.
I like Landon Jackson, but I like him as an end of day 2, early day 3 guy.
Okay.
I think that I'm really happy because obviously the stuff that went viral a couple of years ago with Landon Jackson smacking the bags and looking absolutely insane, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad that he got a chance to really make his mark at the combine. He looks so much better at the combine than he had, and he looks so fluid. I was like, good for this guy. Yeah, and he also added 40 pounds to his frame during his time at Arkansas. But the thing is, he looks like he added 40 pounds to his frame, right? Very linear guy, not super bendy. He's experienced in taking reps at multiple alignments, and he's got some great tape against Alabama in 2023. And I think he's a projection. I think he's one of those players. He's a really linear pass rusher. He had a lot of reps and some cool wins. But if you step back and look over the entire body of work, he just didn't win enough, and he didn't win in enough ways. So I think he's somebody you take, early day 3, late day 2. And there are people who are thinking this is an early day 2 guy. And I feel a little differently about him than other people. So those are my 2 players that immediately come to mind.
Yeah. So I feel like that I really do want us to target a wide receiver, but like I'm really just looking at like 4th to 5th round, right? Like I often say that at least Joe Brady, at least what he's been doing for the past 2 years. So he's really been trying to moneyball a wide receiver number 1, right? Like just by pulling up specific strengths from different guys, right? Like have the route runner, have the yak guy with Khalil Shakir, have the big body on the outside and Keon Coleman. Supposedly had the speed guy right within Curtis Samuel. We're locked in with his contract. Hopefully him and Josh Allen can establish some sort of chemistry. But I do think that we still need to find somebody on the outside that can win vertically. And I hate when people hyper obsess over a 40-yard dash, like separation, right? Like whether or not that like you're creating it with speed, whatever. But one for me, and I'm not sure if I'm just against Texas wide receivers. I hope that I'm not helmet scouting. But last year, I was not so much high on Xavier Worthy. I thought that he was significantly undersized. Sure, you could scheme him open with some pre-snap motion, perhaps. I was not high on A.D. Mitchell. I got in heated debates on X about how I didn't want that guy to be on this team. But Isaiah Bond, for me, not really into it. He just seems so gimmicky. I feel like the only part of his game is exclusively just to be the go route guy. I feel like he has a lot left to learn. He's kind of somebody I'm kind of stepping away from, and I would much rather wait on a Jalen Royals, much rather wait on a Kyle Williams. Hell, you know what? I would even roll the dice on Thornton out of Tennessee in the damn 6th or 7th round prior to him. That's just how crazy I feel about that prospect.
I get it completely. I really do. And I think that you've correctly identified kind of the right range that I think that the Bills are probably looking at and the right skill set, right? Because you're trying to make a collection of skill sets. If you think about the numbers, it's Keon Coleman, it's Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel's there. And you think to yourself, okay, I've got these players. I just signed Josh Palmer. That's your top 4, right? The Bills typically only keep 5 or 6. and you're only going to activate 5, which means you need your 5th guy. I mean, this is the Marquez Valdez Scantling move, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it is. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of thing you're thinking about. It's not, you're going to get verticality, and you're going to get verticality a la carte, right? There's some sort of way we can, verticartally, or there's some sort of word we can make to kind of make that clever, but it's verticality a la carte. I think that you're looking at closer to the Jalen Lanes of the world. I think those are the kind of players that you're looking at. The Bills, I think, have had an interview with Lane, and that's a player that you think to yourself, okay, I think there's something there, but you need a 5th wide receiver who's going to come in and compete. And if he happens to perform better than Curtis Samuel, cool, he can be your 4, and that's awesome. But really, this is a 5th guy, and it's team's player. And so for me, I don't think that screams a day 1 or day 2 investment. I just don't think so. Golden is another one of those players who I really like, and as another one of the reasons why I don't like Quinn Ewers is because he's destroying the draft prospects of all these Texas receivers.
True.
But
it's Quinn Ewers' issue.
Right. It's a Quinn Ewers issue, but I think you're really looking at a day 3 vertical player who can come in and play teams. I think that's really what you're looking at with wide receiver. And I know people are going to be disappointed by that, but I think that's probably likely to be the way that the Bills look at it.
Yeah. And so I would agree with you there, Bruce. So I definitely want to respect your time here, but we have to talk about this James Cook situation. Several people have been saying, oh man, listen, we have to go on ahead and draft his replacement this year. In my opinion, Bruce, so I look at James Cook, and certainly it's unfortunate, but obviously we were penny pinching this offseason. It was miraculous, by the way, that we were able to bring back and extend as many guys as we were, because I was convinced that we were going to have to make 2 guys play on their final year of their rookie deal. And prior to that Christian Benford extension, I was saying, okay, I don't think that we're going to have enough wiggle room to get him and James Cook. Definitely not both. And some people have been freaking out about, oh, he's going to hold out. In my opinion, I really don't think he has much leverage at all. He has only made $4.3 million, I think, in his NFL career already. He is set to make 5.2 in 2025. So more than likely, I don't think that it would behoove him to sit out and not have any income whatsoever, and then also take away a full year of potential production that could give him an opportunity of having a tryout for whatever team is interested in signing him next year for that $15 million that he is looking for. But now people are saying, oh no, we should go on ahead and we should draft a running back in the later rounds. I am somewhat, I'd say, against that, largely because I feel like a lot of our running success has had everything to do with Joe Brady taking over, right? And putting that more on a pedestal. And also what Cromer has been able to accomplish by having the perfect personnel set and to put together one of the best run blocking offensive lines that we have seen in quite some time. So thoughts on this James Cook situation? Should we go to the draft and find someone just in case? Is a very deep class. And like, you could probably find a day 1 contributor, I'd say all the way down to the 5th and or the 6th round. But thoughts on James Cook and whether or not that we should bring somebody in?
There's a connective tissue, I think, between the reason why someone wouldn't want to pay James Cook and the reason why they wouldn't want to draft a running back this year. I think there's a connection there, and we don't think about it. So one of the reasons why people wouldn't want to pay James Cook is because the value proposition of a running back on a $15 million a year contract versus the value proposition of a running back on a rookie contract is so incredibly significant difference that you think to yourself, okay, like, that's why you get him for a rookie contract, and you say, hey, you know what? Appreciate it. Somebody else can give you $15 million a year. I'm cool with that, right? By that same token, why would you then draft a running back with the idea that you would sit them so that they're ready to take over? Because you maximize your value when they're on the rookie contract and they're playing. I don't want to season a running back. Running backs don't need to be seasoned. You don't sit them on the, okay, guys, now here's how you run in the NFL. Like, we've seen so much data that indicates that rookie running backs are one of the most translatable positions in the NFL. And ironically enough, it's one of the most translatable positions because it's one of the most dependent positions. And because it's so dependent, it's the reason why you don't want to pay them. So it's all connected. The idea that your running back success is based so much on the play caller and opportunity and whether or not you get the ball. I mean, James Cook had 2 touchdowns, a bajillion touchdowns. Like, which one of those things do you think is an outlier? Right.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that production, you think to yourself, okay, a huge chunk of my success is based on my situation. It's based on the things that are around me. Well, that means that I'm not going to draft somebody until I'm ready to put them in the situation. So I don't want to season running backs. I want to draft them in the near year you need them. When you need one, you go to the store and get one. Like it's like avocados. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't buy an avocado the week before you need an avocado.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You're going to end up with brown avocados. Why do you do it? You buy an avocado the day you need an avocado. Running backs are like avocados.
It is the perfect analogy right there, Bruce. That is the perfect analogy, ladies and gentlemen. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Dom Mafia Report. You have to go check out Bruce over on the Bruce exclusive podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. So you're posting weekly now, Bruce? So I believe the schedule is?
Yeah, every Thursday.
Every single Thursday. Go check out Bruce. He goes in depth on a lot of the topics that you care about. I cannot thank you enough for taking some time to sit down with me today, man. I know that your media schedule has been pretty crazy the past couple of weeks. I feel like I've been seeing you everywhere.
Yeah, this is the first of 3 guest spots I have in the next week. So draft time always ends up like this around draft time. And then because eventually people have told you everything they're going to tell you and like, here, I need someone new to tell you things. Let me bring in someone different, listen to a different voice for a while. And so this is where stuff gets really testy right now. Like from now until the draft, people are tired of looking at these prospects. They've looked at all the players they're going to look at, and they're just going to beat each other up on social media about the fact that they don't like specific players. So best of luck to you all out there in the environment. Stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and hopefully we'll all get out okay.
Absolutely. And do not be afraid to distribute pineapples, as Bruce always says.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Dom Mafia Report. We will see you tomorrow.